in my experience, they're not that decisive when it comes to making product level decisions.
If you're all using large language models to decide what your product's going to be, you're all going to end up being the same. You're all going to be looking the same.
I'm a wee lad.
Yeah,
I'm like a leprechaun,
I know.
just holding my lucky charms. Entry music. Da, 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 da. It's the Bob and Josh show.
AI has solved everything, right? You can ship more code. So that means life is wonderful. Life's better. Life's easier. We talked a little bit about this last episode where is faster better? We're doubling down on that today. And we're talking about how AI has really accelerated the middle of your process, the creation of the code. But both the beginning and the end of the process, air quote, have some new challenges because we can go faster. So on the product side, we can ship faster. What should we be shipping? Should we be shipping all of this code? Then after the code is created, how do we effectively get it into our users' hands? Do they care? Do they even know about it? How's the support team keeping up? The sales team, the marketing team? How do we help them keep up with this new pace? So that's what's on the docket for today. And Bob has a significant past and passion in this space. As you may or may not know, he's written some product owner books. He and I first met when he was in QA and I was in dev. So that, created some natural tensions. So
Well,
we're going to talk through, we're
I
going to talk
was
through
in
that.
QA when we met, wasn't I? I was
Yeah.
like leading a QA team.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
Not my particularly favorite thing to do.
Yeah.
And as I recall, that QA team was special in many
Yeah. Well,
in
yeah.
many
Yeah.
ways.
Yeah.
Uh, I want to take us upstream first, Josh, and not so much even from a product. I don't even want to say product ownership or product, but I want to talk about, and maybe this is just my bias or my, not bias, but my experience. Uh, but leaders have trouble deciding on, I'll say leaders, like corporate leaders, uh, C-level leaders, directors, VPs, sort of mid-level leaders. In my experience, they're not that decisive when it comes to making product level decisions. Uh, they'll ask for everything. It's almost like a scattershot view of the priorities are in here somewhere, so we just need to build all of this. Or if you try to make them prioritize, they feel you can tell they feel uncomfortable because they have to actually make bets that they're uncomfortable making. I don't even know if it's a data thing. It's sort of a risk aversion thing. It's putting their money where their mouth is thing. It's getting guidance from leaders, specific guidance as opposed to broad scattershot guidance. They're good at that. Uh, and I don't think they trust tools or data or spreadsheet. It's gut feel. Very often leaders are trusting their gut feel or the last customer they talk to. So bringing AI back into that, I don't know. Does AI replace that? I look at that as being a hurdle or a bottleneck to some degree. And I don't know if they'll trust AI decisions. I mean, they don't trust their own decisions, let alone like bringing AI into. So there's this bottleneck upstream, uh, and if you improve the speed of the pipeline, I think it exacerbates that. We touched on that last week. Do you see product and leadership decision making around product differently than I just?
I have a opposing view to that. I
Okay.
do I do agree with you, and we've talked about this over the past couple of years. How I've become a product person because all
Mhm.
of my clients have had that exact same issue that Bob talked about, where there was no clear strategic direction, and it was very like I really latched on to when Bob said the last customer that they spoke with. A number of
Yeah.
places where that is the driver of this is what we have to build, and so now the team is getting fishtailed all over the place. So we got to build this, we got to build this, we got to build this, and they can't ever finish it. What I worry about is that AI enables that behavior because now that shift isn't such a large lift. To go build that thing that that last customer wanted now is easier to get from A to Z. It's faster to get there. So your capability to not make a decision and just shotgun blast your customers with all of these different things and then waiting for them to tell you what they like, there's a real challenge there in that that can and likely will overwhelm the customers, and they'll just opt out because it's become too noisy and too confusing and they can't get their standards in place for their customers. I've spent most of my time in a B2B SaaS. So that's one of those things where customers tend to get in a groove and they like their product to get better, but they don't like it to change because
Right.
they have
Right.
thousands of people using the product, and there's processes and standards and things that they do and all of that. So there's times where change isn't a good thing, but the capability to, oh yeah, we can build that quickly. I'm worried it has the potential to enable the bad behavior where you don't have to make a decision. You don't have to have clear strategic
With you.
direction
I'm
of
with
this
you.
is who
Yeah.
of who we want to be, which, as Bob pointed out, is a very common problem.
I buy what you're selling, Gunga Din.
Mm.
So, yeah, I actually, God, this never happens, Metacasters. I'm going to
Yes, it
agree
does.
with Josh. He just changed my mind. But yeah, it does exacerbate that. So it undermines that. So it takes, well, amplifies. It takes that lack of decisiveness and
Right.
it just amplifies it and doesn't hold their feet to the fire. The other thing I see with AI, Josh, as you were talking, I was thinking, there's a lot of product owners, product managers who are using AI to build user stories and uh, micro roadmaps, and not so much strategic roadmaps, but micro roadmaps and stories and stuff. And I see that as a danger as well. I mean, literally prompting stories and just getting these cascades and then just feeding it to the teams thoughtlessly without much pre-work, just feeding that to the team. And I see that as an AI, a danger of, I always thought it goes back to that the conversation is the most important part of the
Right.
story. And this is going to undermine that aspect as well. Like there'll be no conversations, or it'll be conversations around a prompt as opposed to conversations around like a usage model or a user story. Do you have any feedback on that or any reactions to it?
So I think of two things. One, the label of the role is product owner.
I
So
know.
do you really own the product when you're relying on Claude? And that's something that I've written a lot about that makes Bob happy when I say that. Bob, at one point when I was all in on AI and testing things out, and he asked me a very valid question of who owns the product, you or Claude? And the reality was Claude owned it. And I was just kind of like along for the ride. And that's the reality of, if as a product leader, you relegate yourself to whatever Claude says, then who's really making the decisions? Who's steering the ship? And your teams need that clarity. Your teams will have questions that they're relying on you to have the answers, or quickly get the answers, and not, maybe you get them from Claude, but you know, again, what's the value at that point? What value you're bringing to the table? Because there's no reason the team can't prompt for stories, like you just a prompter at that point. And you aren't really driving the product. Now, I think Claude can do some amazing things in helping you be more effective and expand your stories, or research your stories, or research competitors, or research the market. There's a ton of amazing things it can do to help you fill in the gaps. But your team, your company still needs you to have your hand firmly on the wheel. And that's where things get challenging, because if you rely on the statistical model that is the LLM, you will meet everybody else in the middle, because it's going to give you the most statistically significant response to the problem you're trying to solve, which means everybody else that's asking the same question is going to
Getting the
get the
same
same answer.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
you and your competition are going to narrow in on all being the same. And in a world where you need to differentiate and separate yourself from your competition. If you're all using large language models to decide what your product's going to be, you're all going to end up being the same. You're all going to be looking the same. There's a ton of content that is out there where it is obvious when a website is LLM generated because they all look the same. Because again, it gives you what the most expected answer would be for the problem you're trying to solve. Hey, I need a SaaS website that does this for this B2B
Right.
market. And guess what? They're all starting to look the same. And so there's even a ton of pushback and products and companies that are getting built around solving that problem because that's such a big issue. So not only is the look going to start to look the same, but also the functionality. And now you're just part of the also rans and you just look like everybody else. And that's a problem for your company.
I mean, as you were talking, Josh, I was also thinking of it, it's a, it's missing this thing. I wrote down vision and passion and differentiation. And so, is it human generated or Claude or whatever AI generated? And I like teams. I want human. It's not even the words. It's not even the the descriptions. It's I've talked to you about a product. I remember coming into a company that you worked at, and you were, you said Bob's coming in or something to do some product training, but you were talking about the why behind me being there, and you were connecting it to the product, and you were connecting it to your vision of the product, and it was, and people, one of your intents was to excite people, to get them excited and motivated, and this is an interesting problem to solve, and and I don't think AI can do that. Maybe a little bit, but humans do that, right? Human leaders do that. Human product leaders do that. Steve Jobs, right? He had all kinds of management challenges, but the man understood his market. The man, like ideation and creativity and things like that, and then sticking to your guns, right? This is what we're going to build. I have the vision. This is what we do, and this is where it's in these lines. And I think thinking about working on teams that are interacting with someone like that, and that's freaking exciting. That generates energy. That translates into the product. And the reason I'm getting excited, I don't think AI does that. And I don't mean to sound like a curmudgeon. I'm not anti AI, but it's like this upfront stuff. You need to get, part of that is energizing the company, energizing clients. Going out and presenting your ideas to your clients, talking about what problems you're trying to solve and what it's going to do for them, like pre-sales, pre-envisioning. I hope people don't like have some kind of Claude output that they, or power, a deck, a PowerPoint deck that Claude produces. This is the excitement of the product. I don't know if it does that. What do you think? The visionation,
Yeah,
the envisioning cycle, and the energy
I
cycle.
I understand exactly what you're saying, and I agree with you that
I feel a butt's coming.
there is a spark that humans can bring. But there are times when Claude, again, because it has so much knowledge and context that it feels like it's a spark, but it's not a spark. It's just, hey, here's the thing that somebody else has done. Because remember,
Yeah,
everything in
that's what
Claude
I'm
is a
saying.
representation of something that somebody else has done, of something that has been created and shoved into the model. So you're not
Correct.
really going to get anything new or fundamentally different. You are going to get something that you might not have known about, but you're not going to get something brand new. That's a capability that still is human based. And, that's the whole AGI thing that when LLMs get there, that's a different game. And will they get there? Who knows? If they do, people talk
That's
about
it.
that's
That's what I'm talking
yeah,
about, right? And to me, it's the important. Maybe if 80% of it is Claude or AI driven, and then there's a 20% facade on top, the human facade. I think the value, the energy, the passion, the
yeah.
vision is that 20%. Uh, do the 80% if you want to, but then what makes this different? What makes this valuable to humans? What makes this Like if I'm a developer, you're still going to have developers, I think, at some point, right? And designers at some point
Yeah.
doing something, humans, and what gets them out of bed in the morning? I don't think it's Claude. I don't think it's their AI partner. That's not going to get me jumping out of bed in the morning. If you think about like nonprofit stuff or, sort of, you know, uh, global, like global warming and things like translating what we're doing into things that matter to humans. I know there's an 80% story, but I think there's the 20% story about that. And,
Yeah,
and and
no,
it's not just the employees, it's the customers.
yeah.
I mean, like you said, they're gonna have very similar products. So what's the differentiator?
Yeah, it's a very similar challenge to what we're seeing in the development space right now. And the companies that are hiring more developers, because hiring for developers, the stats are out there. It's the highest it's been in years. Yes, there's lots of companies that are firing people, but the number of jobs for engineers is growing, and it's growing pretty quickly. And that's backed by the companies that never define the value of a developer by how well they could type stuff into
Exactly.
a window and get something on the other side. It's how do you look at a complex problem and how can you break it down and get it built in a scalable, maintainable way. The same thing applies on the product side of the house. Of there's all the content generation that needs to get consumed by your teams and their large language models and all those things. But there's the ideation, there's the leadership, there's the pioneering vision, there's the excitement, there's everything that goes along with that of being a product leader that Claude cannot do. There's lots of things that Claude can help you do, that it can help you with at 80%, but that 20% is that magic, just like the 20% that is magic for developers that can look at a problem in a space and say, no one solved this. How the heck are we going to do this? And what am I going to do? Like, how am I going to figure this out? And we go and we noodle on it and we come back and we like, okay, cool. I've got a plan. The architecture looks like this. This is how we're going to do it. Okay, now Claude, help me make that happen. And bloop, it makes it happen. That's that same thing exists at all levels. So that's the challenge, is really all of the hard stuff is still there. Everything that makes you pause and makes me look out the window and wonder, like, how the heck am I going to do this? Both at the product level and at the code level, that all still exists. That all doesn't go away. We've automated some of the data entry and communication protocols and things like that, but still the hard work is still there, and it's still hard. It's still hard.
Wonder while we're up the beginning of the funnel or the flow, Josh. I was just as you were talking, I thought of simple, and I was thinking simplicity and simplicity of design, simplicity of usability, simplicity of architecture. I don't know enough about Claude code and things like that, or AI generated code. Is it easy to create? But what I do know is human generated code. One of the hardest things. So it was easy to design complexity. It was hard to design simply. It was hard to architect to the simplest possible thing that could work, etc. Is that easy in AI? Do you just default say, and it needs to be simple, and it becomes the simplest possible thing that
No,
could work?
no, and it can and will get off the rails, and it takes an expert to be able to notice it's getting off the rails
Ah,
and
yeah.
stop it before it gets way off course. Because again, it's trained on all of the human generated code. So
That's what I was thinking.
yeah, so just as Bob said, it's hard to build a really elegant, simple product that is
Yeah,
scalable and maintainable. So that means that's a rarity. So that means it's rare for the models to have the knowledge of how to do that. And it's not the
yeah,
model's fault, it's our fault because of we've
yeah,
trained it on what we've built. So it will solve a problem, but it has a propensity to build this Frankenstein monster. But you can easily take your eye off of it and you can come back and see that, oh, the test that was failing is now passing. And you're like, oh, cool, I'll just move on. Sure, that's good. But sometimes you look under the covers, you're like, holy crap. Like I wrestled with Claude last night for about a half hour because it went off the rails, and I caught it just in time. I was like, whoa, 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 whoa. Like, what are we doing? This is breaking like every pattern we've ever put in place. Why are we doing it like this? It was solving the problem. It found a way to solve the problem, but it was a freaking mess.
Yeah.
So I had to, kind of corral it and get it back in line.
So that's another aspect to amplify on this up front of the process. Design for simplicity, design for maintainability, architect for simplicity. That's still, we need humans in there as well, and we can go off. Why don't we go to the other end of the pipe? What do
Would
you
love to.
think? All right. So let's just even define what's. So I think of terms like QA, deployment, supportability, maintainability at that end. Uh, I think of customer usage, customer being able to accept the releases,
Yep.
right? The frequency of the releases, making sense of them. We talked lately about that in the last Metacast. I think of regulatory concerns from a QA, so performance concerns, performance test. So there's the what folks would I would used to call or still call the illities. Maintainability, reliability, performance was in there. All of these illity kinds of things, which were QA. We're in the QA domain. Um, I think that's another area. Maybe you could weigh in first, but I think that's an area where, again, humans need to weigh into that.
Yeah, there's that where I want to make sure we go is I've invested heavily over the past 6 years in what many call product ops. And
Yeah, yeah,
that that is to me defined as your product team enabling all of the consumers of your product to run at top speed, to make
yep.
sure marketing knows what is shipping, what has shipped, so that they can educate sales, they can educate the customers, making sure support knows what's coming, when it's coming, how to support it, what all the ins and outs are, getting the documentation ready for customers and any release packaging or training or anything that is needed to have the product actually land in a customer's lap and be used. So those were things that we measured was how effectively are our new features getting used, or does it land and it just sits there because nobody knows about it,
Right.
right? That's a problem. So there's certainly the QA side, which there's some interesting things going on in the AI space that I think, again, similar to things we've talked about, will get you 80% of the way there, but not all the way there. Because over the years, Bob and I have both talked about the value of what I call a QA brain. Like a like a quality engineer has a very unique ingenuity, skill. I don't know what it is that they can look at a thing and view it as a challenge and say, I'm going to break that. And I already know 10 ways I'm going to break it and I can't wait. And that's one of those like human spark things that we talked about that I've not seen a QA that I've not seen a large language model replicate yet. You can automate the crap out of tests, and there's a ton of great things that you can do with it that does some really cool and interesting things that I'm working on right now. But there's still that ingenuity and that spark of like, I'm going to break this in a way that you never thought of.
I still think. I mean, I don't know if it's product ops. It might be product ops, but I still think there's this. At the end of the very line, and we touched on this last week. At the end of the product ops pipeline, at the end of the DevOps pipeline, at the end of the development pipeline, or whatever, or the upfront, there are. Last time I checked, AI is not purchasing products. Human beings, and I think this will probably carry forward until what is it? Skynet takes care of everything. We're we're the customer. Our ability to figure things out. You can do anything you want, but if you hit me with something overly complex too frequently, etc., if you're not listening to me, if you don't understand my usage models, which change over time, if you don't understand multiple generational models, for example, look at Josh and I, everyone. I hate to tell you, but we're in two different generations. I know it's hard to believe because I'm so young looking,
I'm
but
so old
we're in
looking.
two, and we could bring and we could I could bring my grandbabies into play on another screen, and Josh could bring his kids into play. So now we have four generations. So not everyone is an automaton. And trust me, the word processor, this is tongue in cheek, but the word processor I use and the word processor that Josh uses or editor or whatever are totally different, and how we different. And we're not, I don't think, I'm just bringing the humans into play. We talk about the humans and the AI interaction in the construction of product, right? The creation and the construction and delivery of product. There's the usage model. There's the usage of by humans, and that's something. I don't think folks are thinking about that, and I think it's too fast. I think what's happening is we're focusing on, we talked about this last week. Is speed always good? And now I'm bringing it right to the end in my lap and Josh's lap. And Josh may say, yes, that was perfect. And Bob will say, no, that's not perfect. And my grandchild will say, that wasn't fast enough, right? Vara, my granddaughter, will actually say that because I don't know how they process that information, but they would. And so how do you meet those needs? How do you, because you will turn me off. I will not purchase you if you're not metering to me, metering in speed of functionality, metering in customer support. Like another thing that just pisses me off is when I get an AI bot and when I call a customer support line and I know I'm talking to a machine. Josh probably loves that. I don't like it at all. I want to hang up. I want to stop paying you right then. At that, so there's this variation of humans. Josh, weigh in on that a little bit.
Yeah, I think the most important thing is knowing the buyer
Yeah.
and and understanding that we go all the way back to some of the very first things that Bob said around you have to generate some excitement about your product for someone to be willing to part with their own money, to hand
Yeah.
you their hard earned cash to say, I love what you're doing. I would like that. And please take this money monthly from me in perpetuity because what you're doing is so amazing. That's not an easy thing to do. And that requires think about the things that you like, the things that you pay for. You pay for them. You like them because they are better. They are different. They are something that makes your life easier. And the way they do that is they really understand you as a user and they deliver a product that meets that. And yes, it has improvements and it gets better, but don't you kind of like when things are the same with your products? Don't you get a little kind of like it's amazing how everybody gets a little bit grumpy when someone changes a thing, even though it's all with the best intent and it's all better and we're trying to make this easier for you to use, but it's different. Humans, we still struggle with that a little bit.
Also tolerate your vision. So I'll if you have a vision and I align with it, I will tolerate not so much feature creep, but how about defects or performance issues? I've noticed like the sites are going down or something, and there's security issues, which again is going to open up that flaw without QA if you don't have effective QA. If I connect to your vision of the product, I'll be more tolerant of that. I won't like it, but when you fire the site back up, or if you lose my data, but you're solving world hunger, I'd be more tolerant of that than if you're providing some other thing. So vision matters, right? Vision alignment, right, matters as well. And how effectively do you do that? So it's the frequency, it's the quality, it's the tolerance you have. Uh, Loyalty, like customer loyalty is still. Is that gone, Josh? Maybe that's gone. Maybe I'm
No,
too.
no, no. It's a thing still.
Is it?
Yeah.
So customer loyalty, but I'm not loyal to your feature set. I'm not loyal to your clothes. I mean, I'm a user of it, but I'm loyal to what you stand for. I'm loyal. Like, for example, Elon Musk. I would never buy a Tesla. And I know Metacasters, you can cast stones if you want, but it's the character of the leader matters. The visions matter. Are they making a difference in the world matter? I would drive a jalopy rather than buy a Tesla. That's just me. But again, I'm indicating that connection to vision and to your ethics, etc. And that's not AI driven. It's not.
Right. So let's get to some just like practicalities
I
of,
knew I was
yeah,
rambling. Are you going to do the Josh thing and
I
bring us
am
back
doing
to
the
the
Josh thing.
All right,
So
cool.
in the last 5 minutes, we are going to get to like practicalities of, okay, cool. You've optimized the beginning. So now you know what you need to build and you've got this massive backlog and your team's just cranking through it. And now
Yep.
your team is cranking through it and features are just coming out of your ears. And so you now, as an organizational leader or a product ops leader, product leader, engineering leader, you now have this just tidal wave of content that's coming at the rest of your organization. Let's talk through how we can support them. I think the first thing you have to do that many people, that too many companies don't do, is just recognize that that's a thing, as opposed to being so proud of this monster that you've created, that I've created this thing that can ship so much code. You have to recognize and understand your customers, both internal and external. Not enough teams recognize that sometimes that speed can do damage. So now you're going to need to invest in, how do I get better at my communication, which maybe never existed or existed slightly. And so now you're going to have to focus and build tools or patterns or practices to help educate internally. This is what we're shipping. This is when it's happening. This is what's coming next. This is how it works. This is how you use it. This is how you install it. This is how you support it. All of that stuff has to be at the front of your brain. And if not, then you are just creating a mess for yourself, your customers, and your company.
I would buy that. That's wonderful advice for the inside. Is all of that readiness stuff. And again, AI can help accelerate that readiness, training, the awareness, the documentation. I do think there's also something practically you have to do is, and this is not AI driven. I mean, AI can help maybe, but it's understand your customer and understand their tolerance for change. And then I'm going to say something that a lot of folks aren't going to like, and meter your product. I'll say it again, and meter your product release cycle. So behind the curtain, you can be making 8,000, I see something, 8,000 changes per millisecond. That's fantastic. Pat yourselves on the back. But there are these human beings out there that are paying, they're the ones generating your revenue and using it. So how do you meter it in a way, in a time sequence that let's talk monthly releases or quarterly. I know that sounds absurd, but on whatever that they can meter it. Josh and I were talking about this last time. There are companies that even a quarterly release cycle for certain characteristics of products are intolerable for them. They can't tolerate that level of change. And I see so many companies and products that they sort of ignore that. They're sort of aware of it, but it's like, tough, suck it up. We're going to give you a document where no, meter it, meet them where they are. So I
Yeah.
think I think there's an outbound side that you have to understand that and meet your clients where they are, whether you like it or not. That means you need to meter the releases. You need to be able to withdraw features. You need to be able to feature toggle whatever you need to do to meet them where they are. And I don't think a lot of folks do that, or we're not doing that well enough.
Yeah. Here's a very real world example that I'll leave with everybody that demonstrates a organization's excitement about, I've built this thing that can generate so much code. Gary Tan is one of the founders of Y Combinator, and I've followed him for years, and I've liked some of the things he said. In the past couple of weeks, he's published how using Claude Code, he is now able to generate 37,000 lines of code a day across his 5 products. And he's just he's been everywhere talking about how amazing that is and how all of this is wonderful. And everybody in the engineering space raised their hands like that. That's actually not a good thing. That
Yep.
seems bad. So you're generating 100,000 lines of code in 3 days. Like
Exactly.
that doesn't seem good. So one of the guys that I follow said, okay, cool. Let's go load up one of his sites. And he built his own personal blog. The blog was timing out because it couldn't load, and it was like weeks old. So it wasn't like it had, 50 years of data in it. It was a brand new website with not a lot of data behind it, but because it was this monstrosity of code, it couldn't even load and deliver itself in 20 seconds. In 2026, who knows what kind of servers it's running on in the cloud or somewhere. I'm sure they're
Yeah.
pretty massive, but it couldn't even deliver content into a browser in 20 seconds. But I'm generating 37,000 lines of code. So that's one of those things where you can look at look at what we've created. But at
Right.
the end of the day, for the users, you've created nothing. You've created a vacuum. You've created
Correct.
disappointment. You've created frustration. You've created a decision for them to walk away
Correct.
and go find something else that solves that problem. So make sure that you are aware of the final product, not just that new fancy engine that you've built, but you got to make sure that you're solving problems people care about.
I want to, I maybe end the episode this way. Josh just says something. I want to nail it. You. He didn't say Claude. He said you. You men. You. So we want you involved at the front end. You need to be involved at the front end. Not totally, but you. You don't need to be divorced. And to that example, it doesn't matter how many hundreds of thousands. If you're just claiming victory and going to the beach and drinking your scotch or whatever, right? We need you involved in understanding your clients, etc. So don't divorce and there's different levels of you involvement along that entire pipeline. Last week we were talking about more the construction, and we still need yous in there. And I would argue that we need yous at the front and we need yous at the back. And the less of that you have, the more danger you can become. And what's happening now with this youthful enthusiasm around AI is everyone's looking at reducing the use. So be thoughtful about that, and
Agreed.
don't go to zero.
Definitely not.
All
Okay.
right, from beautiful downtown Cary, North Carolina.
And beautiful downtown Fuquay-Varina, North Carolina.
I'm Bob, Mr. AI Galen,
And I'm Josh, also sort of AI Anderson. Shake
Jake,
and
and
bake.
Bake. Take care, y'all.